Three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Mark Harbert. How you doing today, Mark?
What's up, Ben? I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here too, and I cannot wait
Yeah.
to jump into this discussion. And I want to ask you to kick it off.
Mhm.
What is your story?
Oh man, my story. I worked in corporate sales, and I absolutely hated it. And as far as an entrepreneur story, I absolutely hated it. So I started diving into home business. I started looking at, I got started in network marketing and really started, endeavoring to build my own business. But I found that I really, really love the internet, so around 2009, I really started getting into online marketing and struggled with it for a couple of years. And then, one day, it just kind of hit. I don't know, something clicked inside and my business kind of took off. And that was about 2012. And ever since, it's been a whirlwind. It's been so good, so fun. And, that's the short story. I could give you the long story, but, entrepreneurship has been literally it's one of those things you can work your tail off and you absolutely love it. I have the philosophy that if you love what you do and do what you love, you don't ever work. And that's really the way I look at it. So it's been great.
Well, I'm going to ask for the long story.
Okay, let's give you the long story, man. Yeah. I think the real biggest thing for me is I remember back in 2000 when like I said, I got started in network marketing, and I met this guy at a Denny's restaurant, and I had no idea about entrepreneurship. Like I had never thought about it. I thought I was going to work a job the rest of my life. And I met this guy at a Denny's restaurant. He sits down and he just asks me one simple question. And he said, if in 5 years from now, if time and money were not an issue, what would you do? And I was like, nobody's ever asked me that before. And so at that very second, like I say like this freedom bug was implanted in my brain. Like it was like, the Matrix where they have that little thing that goes, that's literally what it was. And it was just like grew because I started thinking about, well, what would I do? And it really kind of grew. And, so what happened was from that point, I was working a job. I was an air conditioning technician. And so I'm going through and I'm just start learning more and more about business. I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, totally got hooked, started understanding the differences between businesses and working, being an employee as opposed to a business owner. And I just started exposing myself to more and more information. And of course, throughout that, I mean, you wouldn't be a real entrepreneur if you didn't struggle at some point. I mean, that's part of the, I think that's part of the MO. You have to, and, but it's what I love about that is the self journey that happened, and I started listening to people like Jim Rohn and, I absolutely love John C. Maxwell, and just listening to all these personal development trainers. And at one point I shifted into corporate sales with my job. And I was literally driving for, 3 hours one way to go see accounts and all this. And the whole time I'm listening to Jim Rohn and I'm listening to all these people just pouring into me. And I was a super shy guy. Like I would never want to talk. I was just super shy. And here I am getting into network marketing, which is like, you got to talk to people. So I'm like, Mr. Anti, like, I don't want to talk to people, and, so I just, the more and more I listened, the more I started transforming. And now, I can get up on stage and talk in front of thousands of people and I'm cool with it. It doesn't bother me. And, but before I would have been, it would have drove me nuts. Like I would have been super nervous about it. I mean, it would have not gone well, but the journey for me has been the greatest thing. Just the self-discovery, learning about myself, pushing myself beyond my limits. And that really is my story kind of leading up to 2012. So this is in 2000, I start my entrepreneurial journey. And in 2012, my business took off. So 12 years of this journey of struggle. And then all of a sudden it just hit. It was like something snapped inside and I just went for it. I think it's probably because my back was against the wall. I had gotten to a point, I was actually living with my wife down in Chile. My wife is Chilean. So we were living down there and I was doing some freelance work, things like that. But we got to a point where I literally had $7 in my PayPal account. And we were so broke. And I remember going into the kitchen and my wife had the refrigerator door open and she goes, honey, we need food. And I had this moment. This is what really snapped. I mean, I had this moment of disgust kind of go over me where I was like, I'm so sick and tired of worrying about money all the time. I'm so sick and tired. I've been working this business and it's not happening. It's now or never. And then my wife, she said, if this doesn't work out, you're going to have to go get a job. And I was like, in my head, I was like, no, I don't want that. So that was like, I think that was my point where it just, 3 months later, my business took off and it was, so I think there's something about human psychology when we get our back up against a wall, it kind of forces us. And it wasn't until that point that I reached that point that things started turning around. So that's kind of the longer version. There's a super, super long version, but we only got a few. I know only so much time. So,
dude, I'm so tempted to ask, but maybe we can do a part 2, and then
we can do a part 2. Just my story. We'll talk about it. But, I mean, it's been. What can I say? I mean, like it's. I just think that's the best part of this whole thing is the self-discovery part. I mean, I think that's really what it's about. I mean, and then once what I think is there, it's kind of a twofold thing. You go through this journey, something happens, you have success. And then, I mean, as an entrepreneur, we're thinking about all the money we can make and the freedom we can have. But then when you start to have that, it's like, this is awesome. How can I bring more people along? How can I have more of an impact on others and help them experience this too? And that's kind of where I'm at now with my business. It's great, but I'm all about how can I help more people, build their business, do the things that they do. So that's me.
So I'm curious to learn. I mean, I'm curious about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I'm curious specifically to start with when it did take off, right? That really painful moment. Mm-hmm. And then I believe you said 3 months later, it just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
What did you do differently in those 3 months that you hadn't done in the previous 12 years?
So that's a good question. And so one of the things that I realized at that point when that happened was I had my mindset was I was kind of stuck in this paycheck mentality. Okay. Not to say a paycheck is bad by any means, not to say having a job is bad. Just for me, that's not what I wanted. So I was kind of stuck in the security of a paycheck thing. So I kind of wanted to hold on to that. And it also kept me from pushing forward and actually taking full on action in what I knew that I needed to do. So when I got to that point where I didn't really have a lot of freelance work coming in and I had my business and things that I were doing, it kind of started out in affiliate marketing was when things started going. And I just went on like I said, that moment of disgust. And I had that moment, that like revelation of no more. Like it's enough talk, put up or shut up. It's time to go. It's time to move. And that's when it happened. And I went into this massive action mode and into promoting some of the products that I was promoting. And I was creating videos like crazy online, YouTube videos, blog posts. I was creating content like crazy. And next thing I know, I mean, I'm just getting massive amounts of traffic. People are buying stuff left and right. And I mean, it was a total turnaround. I went from $7 in my PayPal account to my first 5-figure month ever in my business in 90 days, just taking action, and that was for me, like, I mean, the elusive, when you're an entrepreneur, like, I think it's kind of like, man, I just want to hit that 5-figure a month, like, and when I hit that, it was like, wow, now what, and then it was, now I look back and I'm like, well, okay, if I did that, that'd be a really low month now. I'd be like, what's wrong? but it's the mindset, you know. It's amazing to look back and just see the transformation in myself, and it really helps me to be able to help the students that I help, you know, and kind of pour some of that wisdom back to them of the things that I've learned. So
Do you think that those 12 years of not killing it
mhm.
were necessary to get to that pain point, to make that mindset shift, to then start taking massive action? Or do you think you could have just started at that massive action phase and been able to like jump ahead 12 years?
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible, you know. But I think everybody has their own journey, you know. Some people it's a very short period. They hit something and, you know, it goes. Some people are at it for a while because they've got to experience some growth along the way in order to reach a point where they feel like, you know, they can, you know, put the hustle on and go to it. But I think for me, you know, just I don't know. I look back and I don't think I'd change a thing. I mean, honestly, I honestly don't, because I'm really convinced, like, and I always tell my students this, I'm like, look, God set it up this way because if it was just handed to you when you got it, you wouldn't really appreciate it. And I really think that when you go to have some success, it's hard work. You go after it, you want to get it, and when you get it, it's the sweetest thing. You're like, man, finally happened, you know. And you can look back and go, wow, I can truly appreciate what it takes to have success in anything. And so I love that it's set up that way. You know, so that's just me, but you know.
Well, the reason I ask was because I feel like so many people
Yeah.
are like, oh, how can I start this journey today and then be a quadrillionaire tomorrow?
Yeah.
And so, you know, if there is that magical lever to pull, I haven't found it, but I like to ask because
Right.
you know what I mean? So, but I think what you're saying is so true of, you know, we all have our own journey,
Yeah.
and the transformation during that period. I mean, we have to go through that, and
Yeah.
it may take 12 hours, it may take 12 years, but like, you know, whatever you need, that's what it takes. And like,
Yeah.
it's so worth it on the other side that it's like, to me, it's not a, oh, how long will I give it? It's like, okay, well, how long is it going to take? You
Yeah.
know, like, and I'm in it until it's there,
Yeah.
until I hit the finish line.
Well, I always like to tell people too, and they're like, you know, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of the questions I'll ask is, well, like, are you committed to the end goal? Yes. Well, then what does it matter how long it takes? You know, really, that's what it comes to. If you're committed to the end goal, it shouldn't matter. It could take you 10 years, but if you're committed to that, then that's just your journey. You got to go through it, you know? And it is for me, you know, stepping into the entrepreneurial space has been transforming in the sense of that it's changed me and my whole perspective on life. You know, I appreciate things more. I appreciate, you know, the just what it takes to go out there and, you know, make money. I appreciate it when I take that money and spend it on something. I'm like, this is, you know, I always tell people there's like so much. When I made my first $20 commission online, I mean, you would have thought like it was like, you know, I had hit the jackpot. And I always tell people it's like making $20 for yourself is so much more sweeter than, you know, going to a job that you necessarily don't like. And, you know, you can get paid quite a bit, but you're like, give me my check, you know. At least that's the way it was for me. And I know, but when I made that first 20, I'm like, yes, this works. Let's do it, you know. So
Yeah, it's such a sweet moment. I mean, I
sweet.
remember when I started my very first company, and dude, I'll be the first to say I've had a ton of up and downs, you know,
Yeah.
and I have probably made every mistake there is to make.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that just by saying that, I have so many more mistakes to make that I'm not even thinking about that are going to get me. And anyways, but like I started with a marketing agency,
Yeah.
And that very first check from the very first client, it's like, oh.
You know, I know a guy who his first dollar he ever made online, he never cashed the check. He got a check in the mail and he framed it, you know. It was $1, you know.
That's awesome. But that's the best.
It's the
That's the best.
best. It's the
Because
best.
then you're like, oh, this is real. Like, I got paid real money. I mean, maybe digital, but like
Yeah.
real money
Yeah.
from my own real actions.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, all right, let's ramp it up. Let's
That's right.
scale it
What
up.
do we got to do?
Let's
How do
just,
we,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
exactly. So,
That's awesome.
so I'm curious because you've been talking a lot about the journey. We've been talking a lot about the journey, and I'm curious to learn the specific things that you believe you had to maybe overcome, or you had to learn. Like, what were those critical lessons that you needed in order to flip that switch? Like what in those 12 years were the most valuable nuggets of wisdom that you were able to extract?
Wow, there's so many. I look back and I look at all the mentors along the way. You know, it wasn't like, I just, you know, bought a book and hid away in my room and, read books all the time. I went to events. I went to, got around people that were successful. You know, it's one of the greatest principles ever is to find out who's successful and get around them. Do whatever you got to do to talk to them, be their little shadow, find out what they're doing. And I would get around these guys who were super successful. And I would, my goal was to just hear a few little things, like find out what are they doing? How do they think? And I did that religiously. And so that was really a part of me. And I don't know if I can necessarily pinpoint it to just one, but I always equate it to like every time you listen to an audio, every time you read a book, every time you get a nugget from somebody who's been successful, it's a little brick in the wall. And you're just building a house with every little brick. And over time, that exposure to new ideas, new information, ways of thinking, the philosophy of business, being a business owner, that all plays into it, And I think it's just constant exposure to the people who are being successful. Like, I'm telling you right now, I looked at your podcast. It is gold. Like, I'm sitting here talking about like, getting around entrepreneurs, like listen to this podcast. You know what I mean? I mean, this is really what you're doing here on your podcast. And that's what I love about it, because if I had to pinpoint it, that was what it was. It was just a lot of little things that really added up over time. Because it wasn't like, we talked about how, 12 years it took me for my business to take off. I always say I'm like the 12-year overnight success, because what happens is like you have like this, it's kind of unfortunate too, because in our day, people want stuff now. It's like, I don't want to wait. I want to be a millionaire today. And it's like, I remember I got invited out to do a training on what it was that I was doing in my business. And there was probably 1,000 people on this training. So I do this training and immediately like my name is everywhere and everybody's reaching out to me thinking that, what'd you do? Well, it's 12 years, dude. It's 12 years. That's what it was. And, people don't want to hear that. But the reality of it is that that's sometimes what it takes. It doesn't mean it's going to take everybody that long, but it is. I'll tell you, the greatest book I think I ever read was called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And what this book talked about is all the little steps that you take, the little steps, and all those little steps add up. And I don't know, that for me, I can't necessarily say, but I think that's really what it was. It's just a constant getting around people, being around mentors. And that's what made the difference.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the shout out to the show. That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
But I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And to me, the idea of figuring out all these little things and getting a little bit better every single day, it makes you unstoppable, because you know that you don't have to make these humongous leaps and bounds every day. You just need to get a
Right.
little bit better. Maybe you learn one thing, or you fix one thing, or you create one thing.
Yep.
And like over time, that builds and builds and builds. And honestly, I mean, what we're talking about is really deploying the strategy of Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
Because what he does is he invests in, based on my research, he
Yeah.
invests in good companies over long periods of time.
Yeah.
And so that's a long-term approach. Like the reason he does that is because then he gets to take advantage of compounding interest, and
Right.
it just grows and grows and grows and grows. Well, our efforts are the same way.
Yeah.
Building up our momentum, it's the same way. And like, you know, I was talking with Kim Garst, who's a
Yeah.
Forbes
She's
top
amazing.
50 social media power
Yeah.
influencer. Amazing, amazing woman.
She's
I have
awesome.
so much respect for her, right? She said it took her 5 years to make her first $60. Right, Kim Garst, right?
I
And
know,
like
right?
it's just building and building and building and building and building.
Yeah.
And to me, like the idea of mentors also, that
Yeah.
is so critically important.
Huge.
It's so important, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
for everybody who's watching and listening, I really want to share with you something, and I'll be as fast as possible because I want to get back to your wisdom, Mark. But it's too important not to share. Here's how you get mentors, and here's how you like get it the most direct way possible, right? And this is what I've used. This is what I've done. You get on a meeting with somebody, you get on a call with somebody, and beforehand you tell them, I would love to meet you. It would be an honor to hear your story. And people love to tell their story.
Yeah.
Trust me, that's what this whole show is built on. And so you get on a call with them, or you get on a podcast, and you ask them what's your story. You listen, and while you're listening, you really figure out, like, is this person the person that I want to become? Or is in some way do I want to resemble this person? If yes, then okay, now you know you want them to be your mentor. If no, don't worry about it. Be their friend. Work with them. You know, it's good. But if yes, after you have listened very intently to their story, then ask them this question. And it may sound crazy, but all you have to ask them is, would you consider being my mentor? Okay. And most people will say yes. And then all you have to do is follow up. But like, I'm telling you, it works.
It's huge. Having a mentor is such a big thing. I mean, so just to give you an idea, I'd gotten my business to a point where I was making definitely well over six figures. I was probably making 150,000 a year. And this is after, blood, sweat, and tears. Finally, things take off. I had my first 6-figure year, and I'm like, okay, I need to know, what am I going to do to get to, 500,000? What am I going to do, go higher? And so I ended up hiring a coach. And so I hired this coach, somebody who I deeply respected, great guy. And he coached me for 2 years. Okay. The first year I coached with him, I got my business to 300,000. I doubled my revenue. And the third year I did over $500,000. And that was because I had a mentor that I had somebody to give me these little nuggets. Have you thought of this? No, that one little thing made me an extra $5,000, on something. Or it's, you really appreciate that when you have it, when somebody says, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? No, I haven't. And that one little tweak makes all the difference, and so I can't speak enough about mentorship. Like, that is one of the major keys. I have several now that I work with. I've got several guys that I'll reach out and like, hey man, I want to buy an hour of your time. I want to talk to you about this stuff. What can we do? What's your schedule? And I'll get on there and just chat with them, and really, it's just done wonders, man. I can't not say enough about mentorship. It's crucial. It's absolutely crucial.
And I also love what you said about buying an hour of somebody's time. I mean,
absolutely.
In the beginning, some people they'll just get on a call with you just to get on a call.
Yeah.
And maybe you offer to buy them lunch, or oh, and by the way, I've offered to buy like 400, maybe not 400. I've offered to buy easily about 50 people lunch.
Yeah.
0% of the time did I actually end up having to pay for that lunch.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
maybe I got really lucky and they were very nice, but every time I took out my wallet and they said, don't worry about it. Every time it was miraculous. So just offer, I don't know what's going to happen.
You never, hey man, but it's true. I just, it's one of those things that, I think of it like, a brain surgeon. They don't just like go start operating on brains. They shadow other brain surgeons for years, and get mentored by these people. And then they turn around and do the same thing, and it's not just like in business, it's everything, even the best athletes in the world have the greatest trainers. Tiger Woods has a swing coach. I mean, who knows? It's like nobody would think Tiger Woods is like, the best golfer ever, and it's like he has somebody that tweaks him and tweaks his swing, do this, do that. And the reason being is because he recognizes why you need a coach or a mentor. And if that's what he thinks, and that's what all these other people think, well, if they think that, why would I think any different?
Absolutely. So I'm curious because I've been talking about this with some of my students lately, and it's something that I think about all the time. But goal setting, right? And figuring out, okay, this is where I am. This is like the reality of my situation now. Where do I want to go?
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that we can really do anything that we want in our lives. And, I just look back in history, like, has it been done before? If yes, it can definitely be done. If no, why not? Is there some like immutable law of nature that can't be broken?
Yeah.
If yes, maybe table it for now. If no, okay, there's a way. There's a way, right? Yeah. So like just for example, Augustus Caesar, who was the very first emperor of Rome, of the Roman Empire, right? He, at the end of his life, had accumulated, according to BBC, $2.6 trillion of wealth. And, adjusted for today's inflation. Okay. If he could do that, that means the trillion game's open for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I know these things, or at least I hold these beliefs to be true.
Yeah.
So my question to you is there ever a dream that's too big, or can you ever go too far and just, mess up anything by dreaming too big?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm so glad you're bringing this up because I go back to like my childhood, and I remember one of the things where I was glad I didn't listen to what my teachers were telling me, because I was a daydreamer, still am. I loved, like, I'm always thinking about, my wife will tell you, she's like, honey, you're such a dreamer. Like, I've always got these big lofty things, and I'm like, hey, I may never get it, but it's fun to like think about the possibilities, I mean, so I don't think that it's ever, I think if you can dream it, you can do it, and like I said, even if you never attain it, boy, it's going to be fun going for it, and it's going to make life fun too. But I didn't listen to my teachers who said, stop daydreaming, focus. And I was, I knew that I had to focus for times, but I never got rid of that dreaming as a kid, thinking about the possibilities. So no, to answer your question, I absolutely don't think dreaming too big. Dream as big as you can, and if your goal is to go to Mars one day, hey, thank you to Elon Musk. That may happen sooner than we think, So,
well, I am so glad that you did not listen to your teachers, because if you did, we may not be having this conversation right now.
Absolutely.
And who knows? Like I think about this all the time, right? I think about, it really is at the core, I believe, at least at the core, it is our moral obligation to be as successful as we possibly can, and to expand in every area of our lives. And one of my mentors taught me that there's 7 core disciplines in our life, and I've talked about it before on the show, but intellectual, spiritual, physical, relational, industrial, financial, and emotional. And so if we can expand in all 7 of those areas, then we can expand as people. And they're all important. They're all very interrelated. I kind of lost my train of thought, to tell you the truth.
Hey man, I always say it's entrepreneur ADD, man. Hey, when you're moving forward, it's just like, hey.
I remember. So in all of that moving forward, and we're going after it, and we're living our dreams, and we're giving it the best that we can. It is really our moral obligation to do so, because we don't know what we can actually achieve.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that, like, there is no way anybody actually realizes the heights to which they can travel. There's what we think, there's how we perceive reality, and then there's like the actual truth of it, right? And so if we don't give it the best that we can, and we don't get as infinitely close to that potential as we possibly can, I mean, we could be leaving so many things on the table. Like, for you or me, or everybody that's listening, you may cure the next ridiculous disease that's really and you may save millions of lives. You may figure out something cool, like with time travel, or space, or something like that. But you don't know if you're not giving your all. So I don't know, and I'm curious to learn your perspective on it. But I really think, I don't know if there's a right answer, but I believe that we have to do it. It's a moral obligation.
Yeah. Well, I think, entrepreneurs, we're the world changers. Like, think about all the amazing products and services that have come about that have changed the course of history. Think about, the light bulb, just the light bulb alone, changed the course of history. Nobody had to use kerosene lamps anymore. Just those little simple realities. But I believe that also, as entrepreneurs, we have a moral obligation to teach how to think. Honestly, how to think. Like, we live in a very, like I said earlier, now culture. That is not good thinking. People need to understand that if you want to reach a goal, it's going to take work, effort. It's going to, and that's one thing I try to pour into my daughter. I don't ever want her to have that. I got to have it now. It's like, hey, I want that. I'm going to go for it, but it's going to take work, and it's going to take a plan of action to get there. And, I think we've lost some of that. And that's where I think us as entrepreneurs have the moral obligation to step in and remind people that, look, success does not come. Somebody's got to work their tail off to make it happen. And we need to spread that word to people, so that, money doesn't just drop out of, thin air. People have to earn it. People have got to go out there and invent and do great things. And we've seen that, entrepreneurs, like I said, that have changed the world. I look at Elon Musk. He's such a great example. He really is. Everybody told him he could not make an electric car, and it was like, he's like, oh yeah, just watch me, he comes out with Tesla, and it's pretty amazing. So, and think about all the odds against him on that, and so there's so much we could talk about on this topic, but I really feel it's our obligation that we have to go out and spread that message of, helping people understand that if you want something, go for it, but understand it's going to take work, effort, and some goals and mentors to get there.
Absolutely. That really struck at, I think that was a beautiful sentiment, and it really struck at the heart of the show.
Yeah.
That is exactly why, and you actually articulated it in a way that, it really spoke to me. I'm always trying to tell people, like, they're like, why do you do the show? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And I'm like, I'm trying to change the world, try to profoundly impact the way people think, try to show people that you can do anything, and anything is possible. Look at all these amazing entrepreneurs like yourself. At all these amazing people, like, they're doing all these things, and it's not an accident. Like, it's very intentional. It's very hard work, and it's taking control of your destiny. But there's all those little things, right? But they keep building, and I absolutely agree with you. And even if somebody's watching or listening is like, okay, well, I'm not an entrepreneur, so that it doesn't really apply to me. Yes, it does. Yes,
absolutely.
It does, because you don't have to own your own company, and this is my belief, but I don't think you have to own your own company to be an entrepreneur, first of all. And you also, like by applying like entrepreneurial principles to your life in every aspect of your life, it's just going to help. It's going to help you improve. It's going to help you grow. It's going to help you do better, help you focus on the things that you want to focus on, get the things done that you need to get done. So I really couldn't agree more. And I'm curious now because, after going after it for 12 years, and then you have this breakthrough and you're crushing it. And, I feel like at that point you elevated yourself out of the, like a survival mode and into an area of abundance. Yeah. And so it's interesting to me how, that, and maybe you always did it, but it seems like there may have been a shift at some point to where now it seems like you're very, very passionate about teaching and teaching that you've learned. So when did that shift occur, and why, and how?
For me, like I said, there was probably one year or so after my business had really started to take off. I started getting invited to come out and speak at events. And I realized how much I love that. I love getting up and telling people my story. Like you said, people love to tell their story. I love telling my story, and I love getting up there and saying, hey, this is what I did. This may not be the exact path you take, but it can happen. And I think when that started happening, I realized how much I love to train and how much I love being a teacher. And, so that kind of morphed my business into the training and, company that it is today. And that's really where I think that shift started happening. I just remember the first time I was invited out to speak in an event, I was like, no way. And I knew there's going to be like 1,000 people at this event. And I was like, you almost have this idea. You're like, I made it, it's like, but this is just the beginning, this is just the beginning. This is so fun, so I don't know, and what's interesting is like, I'll go to like an event, and I think I try to be a very modest person. Like, I love to go to these events, but you know what, when people come up, I've had people come up and they go, oh man, you're, so inspiring. And like, I love your story. And I'm like, hey, look, I'm just a regular dude. Like, I'm just a regular dude that had a dream and a goal. You can do the same thing. Like, I'm no different than you. And sometimes we tend to put like celebrities and people on a pedestal, but the reality of it is they're just normal people that had a goal, that wanted it bad enough and went after it. There's nothing different. And everybody has a different hand that they're dealt. It's obvious, some people have it worse than others. There's no question about it. There's no debating that. But you got to play the hand you're dealt. Everybody's dealt a different hand. Some people have it easier. Some people have it harder. But you can use that as your excuse or use that as your launching pad. And that is really the way I look at it. And that's kind of the message, I think, with entrepreneurship and, especially, like I said, what you do here is about helping people realize that we all have, the hand we're dealt, and we just got to do something with it. And you may not like the fact that, hey, that guy's got 2 aces, and, a trump card or whatever, and he may have that. Well, that's not fair. Well, that's the hand he was dealt. Play the hand you were dealt. You know what I mean? Stop looking at what he had and what he has and start looking at yours and what can you do? And I think that's the message that I like to send, especially. But I don't know, man. I could tell I love talking about entrepreneur. I could talk about this. It's a good thing we have a time limit here, because I'd probably go for 2 or 3 hours with you, Ben. So,
dude, don't think me with a good time. Well, I'm curious. Mm-hmm. I know I've said that a million times, but I really am. You've done a lot of work on yourself, on your business, on your life, and the story is obviously incredible and very inspirational. But at this point in the journey, mm-hmm. what are the things that you're focused on now, like that you're really working on, that are really challenging for you?
Well, definitely one of the things is I've been expanding my company, and that's been finding the right people to work with. I've got a team, of people that work for me. That's my goal, is to continue to grow my training and education and coaching business, but it's finding the right people. I mean, sometimes, I've learned this too as an entrepreneur, and this has been a challenge for me, as far as going forward, is I want to grow, but I want to grow with the right people that see the vision that I have. And I don't just, because I've had people that come to work for me, and, after a period, they're not the right people. So it's kind of, you got to kind of feel it out and see where it's at. But I have those people now. Like, I'm so excited. People that get it, people that are writing me every day and going like, this is like the funnest thing I've ever done, like, yes, that's what I want to hear, and that's what gets me excited. So for me, I want to continue to grow. And then when we've got, I'm not, it's amazing. Like, I'd love to just go like that, but what I want is long-term vision. I'd rather go like this, slow, steady growth that can be maintained, than skyrocket growth where it's almost out of control. And I know entrepreneurs that have done, $200 million in their company. And that was one of the greatest regrets they had, is that they grew way too fast. It was unsustainable, and the company fell apart because of it, and he's on that path now to growing his new company, which is a lot slower, steady. He's actually pulled back on some things, to make sure that they've got the infrastructure in place to handle it. So I think that's my biggest challenge, if I had to say right now, and what's challenging me is definitely to grow it. But it's fun, man. That's what entrepreneurship's about. It's about the challenge. How do you deal with it? If you don't like dealing with problems, don't be an entrepreneur. It's just the way it is. Like, and sometimes, like in my marriage, I'm like, I'm the fix it guy. Like, let's just fix it and move on, and that doesn't always work well, but the point is that, it's, you just get good at handling problems, and that's what it is. Entrepreneurship is about solving problems. Who invented the hanger? They solved a problem. You know what I mean? Who invented the paperclip? Wow, man, they solved a really big problem. It was so simple. And, but that's really what it's about. So I don't know. That's the long answer there.
So that seems like on the professional side.
Yeah.
But what about the personal side also? I mean, I'm sure there are different mindset challenges that come with being in your position versus where you were before. Like, what do you think are some of those? And I know it's hard to identify them, because it's like, well, if I knew, then I could fix it. But like some of the limiting beliefs or things, or like truths that you hold that may actually be holding you back.
Yeah. That's where it's part of the journey. And I think that's where, when we talked about mentors, that's why you got to be around mentors, because you need a mentor that's going to call your BS. And my mentor that I talked to you about, that helped me grow from, more than, triple my income, man, he chewed me out on a couple things. Like, I'm talking like royal butt chewing. And I'm like, never once did I go, hey dude, I'm paying you a lot of money. I never said that, and it was like, that's what I wanted. Like, for me, I love that direct approach. Like, just tell me, like, I do not get easily offended. Like, I'm the hardest person to offend. You can't offend me. Like, it's very hard. Like, okay, that's fine. And that's what you want to think. But I'm really committed to growing. Now, on the personal side, if I wanted to focus on my personal side, my faith is a very important part of my life. So I'm very committed to growing spiritually. I do, I'm getting ready to go on a missions trip with my church, which I'm excited about, to Peru, actually. So it's kind of the first time I've done something like that, which is really cool. So growing my spiritual life is very important, but also my family. One of the commitments me and my wife made this past year was, we definitely need to travel more. We traveled, but it wasn't like a high priority for us. Last year, that's like, we've gone tons of places. We went back down to Chile for a month. We did some vacationing down there. She got a lot of family. We've gone over a lot of places. We live in Florida. So we're like, hey, we're like in the #1 tourist destination in the world. Like, we need to go visit Florida. And so we're just doing a lot more things personally to help us on a personal side, because definitely life is more than just business. And, working at home, which I do, can be a challenge sometimes. I've contemplated getting an office outside of the house, because there needs to be some of that separation there to hey, when I'm at home, I'm at home, and I think sometimes the challenge working at home is making that separation, and it's difficult sometimes. So those are the personal, challenges I look to grow on for sure.
So, I want to be very respectful of your time.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the show today. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Then we'll wrap it on up. So I'm 24, and the reason that I say that is because I want to ask from specifically my perspective.
Yeah.
But what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Well, I'm 46. I'm about to be 46. So I think one of the questions that I would definitely be asking people is if there was one thing in your life that you really, really had to pin it down, like that really made all the difference in everything. What is it? And I think because everybody's got like a core in them, like something that they really are passionate about. Like, what really gets you up out of bed in the morning? What makes you tick? And I think if you can really ask that and really find out, what people are, what makes them tick, that's where you really start to get to that chewy caramel center, where it's like, that's the yummy part, but then I think if you can really get to that, you can really find out what it is that makes people do what they do. And, I think doing what you're doing already is part of that, man. I applaud you. I love what you're doing. And I think that we need to keep spreading this message. That's what it's about. So.
Absolutely. And I would ask if you could answer that question. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to ask directly.
Well, for me, like I said, the biggest part of my life is my faith. Like, I am super passionate about that. I'm very involved in my church. One of the things I love about entrepreneurship and making money is, guess what? I get to give a lot. Like, that to me is like that. If you had to, like, okay, you hit it. Okay. Like, you got it, man. Like, this is what gets me like fired up. There's nothing like being able to take some money that you've earned and just give it to somebody as a gift. Like, we've given gifts to people and they didn't even know it was from us. Like, because we didn't want them to know. Like, I didn't want to know. I'm not a big person to go out there and say, hey, look at me, this is what I did. That's not me. But I think that that's the most rewarding, to be able to take some of the spoils of success and turn around and like really, really bless somebody's life in their most darkest time, and make a difference. Sometimes people they need something, and that one little thing can really make a difference. So for me, that's the biggest thing, is looking at even just the people who aren't even in my sphere. We have family members that we help too. And I think to myself, I could never do that before. But now we do that. It's like the most important part of what we do. That just makes the difference. And I think if you go at it with that mindset, I know for me, that's what fires me up. I'll talk about this all day long, but I think wealth and success, man, if you're not giving away portions of what you make, you are truly missing out on some of the greatest joy of what life is all about. So that's my deal.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, I want to thank you again so much for coming on the show, for sharing this time with me. It's been very special for me. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
Thank you. And, to everybody who's watching and listening, I want to thank you all very, very much. Your time is valuable. And I'm so grateful that y'all would choose to share some of it with us today. So thank you, everybody who's watching and listening. Thank you again, Mark. And I will see y'all on the next episode.